plenty more difficulty for Speaker McCarthy. Let's hear from Calvin Dark. He's a US political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us, Calvin. For the reasons that I've just set out, it seems to me at the moment an impeachment inquiry to find evidence to impeach. How are the voters going to react to that?
Well, I think that it's going to backfire for the Republicans, and here's why. Unfortunately, after the two impeachments of the former President Donald Trump, the tool of impeachment is even more political than it was before, after the impeachment of Bill Clinton. The problem now, though, is, as you mentioned, there hasn't been any real compelling evidence, barely, that Hunter Biden committed crimes, and then by extension, maybe Joe Biden committed crimes. So for that reason, I think it's going to blow back on the Republicans if the Democrats use every opportunity on the campaign trail to remind folks that there is no evidence that this is an impeachment in search of a crime.
Except Hunter Biden in court did acknowledge that he was paid several $100,000 through partnerships and business deals with Chinese companies. Firms in 2017 and 2018 paid him. His father, who wasn't in the White House then, but said that he'd had no contact with China, and that didn't seem to be true. So is there some of the story that the Bidens have not been very honest about?
Well, I think that there's an argument to be made there. But once again, the problem is even if those explanations that President Biden gave were not accurate, where's the crime? Because let's also remember, it's not a crime to get paid large amounts of money for work you have a contract with for another country.
Which he wouldn't have got if his father hadn't been vice president. I mean, let's make that much clear. He was a recovering drug addict, so he wouldn't have been paid tens of thousands of dollars, whereas father, not previously the VP and potentially the next president.
Well, that is true. Using one's name and one's family name to do what Hunter Biden did is obviously nothing new. But once again, that's also something that he could have done without Joe Biden. And so I think that's the key here. Look, I think most Americans think that if there has been a crime, whether it's Joe Biden, Donald Trump, Hunter Biden, and Calvin Dark, that it should be investigated and gone after. But it seems that this impeachment inquiry is to impeach Joe Biden by trying to find evidence of something to impeach him for.
Can you link this story, the impeachment, with what we were just talking about in the first half hour of the programme, and that is the spending bill which has to go through by the end of the month, which the Ukraine money is attached to? Why is this connected to that?
This is why I love politics in Washington. You see, it hasn't been that long ago since Speaker of the House of Representatives, Kevin McCarthy, had to go through 15 rounds of votes to get his own party members to support him. And he promised a lot of things to them to get their support. And we have to pass a budget before the end of the month, or we're facing a shutdown in the United States. And so Kevin McCarthy had to do this yesterday to try to get the support to avoid a government shutdown from his party. But here's the thing. After his press conference yesterday when he announced it, it appears that some of the hardest line folks in Congress, the most pro-Trump folks in the Republican caucus, weren't satisfied. It wasn't strong enough. So it remains to be seen if they will continue to support Kevin McCarthy. Once again, this is about a disagreement within his own party.
Miles Taylor, how will the voters look at the Republican record in the House of Representatives over the last year? Because quite aside from this process, which we can talk about, it's quite extraordinary to impeach a president without any evidence. But the record of the Republicans getting bills out of committee and passing them on the floor is pretty poor.
Well, Christian, I say this as an American conservative. It's not been a banner year for the U.S. House of Representatives passing constructive legislation. Now, unfortunately, I think most voters don't think with that level of nuance. Unfortunately, they don't consider the record of the Congress before they vote. But I do hope that in individual races, that candidates on the opposing side point out the fact that it's been a remarkably unproductive Congress. And I think what you've seen with Kevin McCarthy is evidence that if you cater to the mob, and in this case, the mob on the far right, you will get carried away by the mob. And it doesn't look like McCarthy's tenure is going to be all that long here, because even these far extreme measures, even grinding the gears of government to a halt are not enough for the MAGA caucus, who wants him instead to detonate democracy's guardrails rather than respect them. So, I think we're in for a rough period here, and it's certainly being driven again by his far right caucus.
Bronwyn, I remember back in the day when we were cub reporters, the impeachment of Bill, the former president. I've had a senior moment. Bill Clinton. Sorry, it was right on the tip of my tongue. Bill Clinton. It was so sensational. I forgot his name. But the former president, Bill Clinton. I mean, that was a quite extraordinary event. And now we've had.
As you said, I was in Washington as U.S. editor of the Times at the time, and it was an extraordinary drama to watch. In a way, this very personal affair between the president and an intern come up against the U.S. Constitution, and the prosecutor Ken Starr going out every morning and putting his coffee cup on the roof of his car and sort of grinning at reporters, and then going out, and you didn't know what would happen, but there was a sense that it was a constitutional moment, however bizarre and however personal it was. It was high drama. Everything else stopped. This is different, as we've just been hearing. It feels very partisan. It indeed feels like something that Mitch McCarthy is doing to try to pacify his party unsuccessfully, and as we've been hearing extensively, without real evidence. Let alone any principle that the sins of the son, if they exist, should be visited on the father.
Calvin, on the issue of impeachment, does the White House have to respond to the subpoenas that it will now presumably be sent?
Well, I think that on the legal side, the White House is going to comply because they don't want to seem as if they are obstructing this inquiry, even if it's based on little to no evidence. But I think from the political standpoint, what we're seeing from the White House, what we're seeing from Biden's campaign team is exactly what it should be. Just say state the obvious, that there is no evidence. And the best thing Biden can do on the campaign trail is be president. There's nothing better than somebody in the job who wants to keep the job, doing the job every day. And that, contrasted with what the Republicans are doing in the House of Representatives, is really going to be on voters' minds next November.
Calvin Dart, good to talk to you this evening. I've learned a thing or two, not least the fact that I might have been a cub reporter, but Bronwyn was already US editor, already writing about US affairs, about Bill Clinton. There we go. Right.